Scott, I have one question for you. If your team drafts a quarterback in the top 5 this year, are you actually excited or are you terrified?
Any team that's in the top 5 this year has bigger fish to fry. We should not be drafting quarterbacks. And that includes you, Raiders. And I know you will. I know they will. No, I wouldn't be excited. If I was a Raiders fan, it'd be nice to have a big name come in, get the crowd hyped up. And that's a problem, I think, with the way that GMs draft sometimes, is it's about hyping up their fan bases, selling tickets, and making the wrong decision for the short and long-term success of their team. So no, D, because just like drafting, God, I can't think tonight. What was the running back that they drafted last year? The dude from Boise.
Oh, you're talking about from the Raiders?
Yeah.
Come on, you know.
No, so you can't think of it either, is what you're telling me.
No, I'm saying you know who it is. It's your boy, the dude that stood straight up.
I know, Michael Myers, Ashton Genty.
Michael Myers.
He's got the Michael Myers stance. He's got the Michael Myers stance.
I thought you were saying his name was Michael Myers.
So
like,
just
what?
like last year, that was the flashy name for the Raiders to draft. They didn't have the pieces around him for him to succeed. And the crazy thing is the guy played really good football, but his stats looked terrible because he had no line at all. Now you're telling me you're going to fix this team by drafting a quarterback? Who's he going to throw it to? Who's going to block for him? I don't like it. I don't think any of these teams in the top 5 have any business drafting a quarterback this year. Say that. Say less. That's what I got for you tonight, D. What about you?
Come on. You got Mendoza. You got Simpson, Beck, Nussmeier, apparently a really fast guy out of Arkansas, Talon Green, apparently really good Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, Diego Pavia. You're saying that none of these guys are worth it?
No, absolutely none of them. I think this is a very weak NFL draft for quarterbacks. I think a lot of these names will be distant memories 5 years from now. So yeah, there it is. There's my take. What about you?
Well, I'm curious of this. If you had to assign a percentage, I'll give you mine. What do you think is like the bust rate on top 5 QBs that are drafted? I know we, at whatever point, we maybe talked about this in the past, but my response to that would be, it's got to be like at least 40%. 40
You're talking about if they're drafted in the top 5?
In the top 5, yeah.
Okay.
How many quarterbacks are a bust, basically, right?
Yeah.
Or boom or bust. So I would say 40 to 50% in the top 5. That's just an estimate, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm gonna Google if there's a list for this really quick. I'm sure there is, but I would kind of agree with you. I think top 5 overall picks at QB, 40 is pretty good. I would maybe say 50% of them end up not being very like long-term starters. I don't know if I'd say busts, but I would say maybe like 3 or 4 years down the road are not starting anymore. Is kind of my prediction here.
Yeah. And a lot of them, I think, do actually stay in the league. They're just backups. Like you know what I mean? You don't even really hear from them. They're serviceable, but they're not top 5, right? Like they were top 5 coming into the NFL, but it's like they kind of were like, maybe you're not so good in the NFL, especially like playing at this level and just what it takes to be a top guy at that position within the NFL.
Yeah, man. It's weird because some years I feel like there is a lot of talent at QB. Like a couple of years ago when we had, like the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix draft, all those guys. I think there was another one I'm missing, but there's a lot of people to be excited about there. More so the first 3 that I mentioned.
Yeah.
But then like last year we had Cam Ward was the big one, and then a huge gap between the rest of them. Like Jackson Dart was one of them, Jalen Milroe, who hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
Will Howard, Shador Sanders, like a lot of these names, we're not going to really ever see starting in the league. And actually, Jackson Dart, I think, he gained a lot of steam right before the draft and ended up being a great pick. Cam Ward may still be fine, but just working with a really rough team, which is the same exact situation that Mendoza is going to go into, going to the Raiders. So yeah, I think a lot of quarterbacks drafted in the top 5 bust, but I think there's a lot of situational factors for that. It's not always their fault. I think a lot of times, I think this applies to every position, but I think it especially applies to quarterbacks, that the scheme and the team that you are put into, especially early in your career, can really dictate what looks like the success or your abilities, maybe more so than the actual abilities that you have. Especially we're talking about young men just out of college that they're getting a ton of money suddenly. Their whole life is changing. They're traveling all the time. Who knows what kind of lavish lifestyle some of these guys are living. and you're putting a responsibility of learning an entirely new system at an entirely new level,
Yeah.
playing for probably a garbage team if they were in the top 5 drafting.
Yeah.
And who knows if
Generally.
that scheme actually matches up with their skill sets, like maybe what their college scheme did. And it's a whole different game at the pro level. So yeah, I think that I don't always blame actual talent for the bust, but I would say probably at least like half of these guys don't last more than 5 years in the league when they're drafted, even in the top 5 overall. If that would be my guess.
Yeah. Well, speaking of bust, welcome to the Single Barrel Sports Podcast. I hope that we give you a little bit of excitement tonight. My name is Deeb.
My name is Scott, draft expert and extraordinaire.
And we are going to be doing everything NFL draft tonight because the draft is this week. And we know we got a lot to talk about tonight.
We sure do. Deeb, I have a confession for you.
Hmm.
I am not as prepared for this year's draft as I usually am. So maybe not so much of an extraordinaire, although I'm excited to talk about it because this is going to be an exciting week for the NFL.
Well, lucky for you, Scott, we're just your average sports fan, and we're going to give you our thoughts. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to pretend to be Mel Kipers. We're going to give you what hopefully you as the average fan feels or maybe thinks about on a daily basis when it comes to this kind of stuff like the draft.
Steve, I'm going to just immediately fire a philosophical question at you. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, okay? I think the NFL has changed in the last decade. There are more players that will switch teams to get the big long-term deal.
Yeah.
There are more trades that happen with big superstars. I feel like historically back in the day, it was pretty rare to see like superstars involved in trades or to see them go to new teams. There was kind of a sense of loyalty, maybe money or financials didn't matter as much, and these big ass ridiculous contracts, at least in my opinion, didn't exist to the extent that they do today. So with that being said, with the amount of players that get moved around throughout their careers, it's very rare to see one player stick to one team. Many players play for 2 or 3 or more teams. Do you think that it actually matters to try and draft your franchise player in the NFL draft? Or should we be trying to just fill all of our needs and maybe not pick the sexy choice, but know that in the free agency a few years from now, we might be able to get that sexy player because salary caps and whatever else might be going on?
Well, I think it kind of depends on your team's scenario, right? Like if we talk about one example we've talked about, I think in the past is the Raiders, and you just know that there are holes and gaps on that team that fundamentally, like if no matter who you get at quarterback or running back, if you do not have a reasonable offensive line, they're not gonna be able to succeed no matter how, even if they're Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, like, yeah, they might be pretty good. They might be able to kind of carry you to wins and you're going to be better overall. But I mean, if your overall goal is to, what I think most people get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, or win your divisional championship, etc. You have to, I think, take it on your team's basis. Like, what is your actual needs on your team and where can you strengthen the team as best as you can? Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's really great when you draft somebody who is a generational talent, but unfortunately, you just never know. You know what I mean? Like, how many times have people thought that these guys are going to be the guy and be that generational talent and they pay them all the money and then they end up not being that? But also they might be in this scenario where they don't have an offensive line or, you know what I mean? Like they're in these weird scenarios where it's like, I don't even know that anybody could succeed in that scenario, no matter how good you are, because you're doomed to fail based on the team makeup and the scheme and, all these different things. So I think it actually makes more sense to figure out where your needs are and draft that way rather than like the shiny pick.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. There's so much philosophy in this, and I think we'll get into some of this later. So I don't want to take up the whole, all of the talking points that we could potentially cover in the first question, but there's so many variables. Like you got to have your fans still excited about your fan base and showing up to the seats and watching the games on television and getting the, the revenue that comes from that. And a big way to supercharge a fandom is by drafting the big superstar. But when you draft a big superstar into a really shitty situation, then your fans just don't. I think that over time, they lose even more faith in you because you kind of proven that you can't draft successfully to build a team that wins. And I liken this to, like, granted, this is a bad example this year, but the Bears were like this for a long time. I feel like every single offseason, Bears fans would get excited. They would think that might be the year their team would turn around. They would be brutally disappointed all over again, to where it became like almost laughable. Like even last year when I think they did everything right, and it clearly did, pay off for them. They had a great season. But even last year, Bears fans were like, yeah, this looks good, but like, We go through this every year. Like, they literally had no faith that it was going to work, even though I thought it looked absolutely fantastic from the outside looking in. And so it's a weird thing where, like, do you want a quick celebration before any games are played, or do you want to have some downstream celebration when you actually win some football games? And when I look at this Raiders football team, it's like, my big question is, who are you going to throw the ball to? We've got their top 3 wide receivers are Trey Tucker, Jack Beck, and Jalen Naylor. Jalen Naylor, who was the 3rd string wide receiver in the Vikings last season, was their big acquisition at wide receiver this offseason.
Wow.
Trey Tucker became their number 1 wide receiver when Jacoby Myers was traded last year and didn't do shit. Like, just absolutely sucked. And they got Brock Bowers there. That's wonderful. But you can't only have Brock Bowers. You know, you just can't. And so not only am I questioning who are they going to throw the ball to, but who's going to block for them. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they really need to address their line and their secondary still. And so it's like, it's a whole lot of gaps to try and draft who's supposed to be like the savior of the team, the big superstar, to come in and actually turn it around. And sometimes it works, right? Sometimes someone comes in and just creates some special magic, but I would not be excited about drafting Mendoza 1st overall if I was the Raiders this year. And I could be wrong. These things happen. But if I was them, and we've talked about this too, trade that freaking pick and get like 2 or 3 really good guys in the first couple of rounds, and then turn your team around in the next year or two instead of continuing the cycle of early draft picks and not being able to win.
Well, I'll give you the opposite perspective though, because I do think there is kind of I would say devil's advocate to some of this as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about it from both sides. I mean, obviously the one I told you is my perspective and what I would do. Does it actually make sense though to try to get the shiny ball, or you know what I mean, the generational player that they could be really that talented, to then draw people to want to come and play on that team, right? Like, is that your anchor where they're like, well, why would anyone want to come and play on this team if they suck and there's no superstars? There's really nothing crazy here for anybody out there like free agents and others to want to come to the team. So what do you say to that?
I think it's twofold. My rebuttal to that is that if you don't have the shiny, let's say you do get the shiny object there, that might attract people to want to come and play. But by the time the draft comes around, a lot of free agency stuff has already happened, and you're probably not making big trades going into the middle of summertime. I mean, it happens, but it's not a super common thing. So then by the end of the first year of the rookie year of this shiny toy, this shiny object, when their stats look like shit, they're not so shiny anymore. People are questioning, well, maybe I don't want to go play there. That's my first rebuttal. My second rebuttal is, let's remove the shiny object and fill in like 3 or 4 holes with some bronze. Maybe it's not gold, but it's some bronze. And then from the outside looking in, maybe you're the player that says, I could go be the shiny object there.
That's fair. There's like opportunity to go there and actually, like, if you're like a 2nd or 3rd string wide receiver, or, you know, backup running back, and you're not really getting your time to shine, could that then be your, or maybe you're, you know, maybe there's 2 top number 1 guys at receiver on a team. You know, then are you like I could really go here and I could be the number 1 by far. You know, I know that they don't have like too much talent. So that's fair. No, I mean, I can see that side as well. I don't know. It is interesting though, because there is like a psychology. I feel like it happens maybe a little more in basketball now that I think about it, where it seems like people flock to teams because they want it was like that whole like super team whatever know, concept that like the Warriors and Heat and all these other people started. I don't know, like, is that a phenomenon just in basketball, or do you feel like, because I mean, if you think about the NFL, you really don't usually get that many people that make moves to a singular team. It's more sporadic.
I think it is more common in basketball because there are typically just the same 5 guys on the court for pretty much the whole game for offense and defense. Now, I know the subs come in and then you got your 6th man and all of that, but it's more likely if you want to play with like a person a lot, you can play with them pretty much the whole game, versus I want to go here because this quarterback is on the team and we're going to spend more than half the game on the sidelines not playing football, you know? So I don't know. It's tough, you know, and there's a lot more variables the more people that are involved.
Yeah. Well, speaking of more people, if anyone's out there right now and you're not subscribed to the Single Barrel Sports Podcast, you better hurry, because right now, Scott, we are approaching our milestone of 200 subscribers, which I know we have set as a huge milestone for us. And I think there's only 3 more slots left. So you could be the 200th person. And if you are the 200th person, leave us a comment on this video because we would love to recognize anyone out there who gets to that 200th spot because that is a huge deal for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd be really cool if we could say that next week we did it. Maybe this content will push us across the finish line tonight, and maybe you will be the reason for it.
Hell yeah. So I know we kind of started talking about quarterbacks. This is one that's interesting. I know we've seen this. The one that comes to mind with me this past year is the Browns. You know, they kind of had a weird QB situation just in general. I'm curious what your thoughts are on, do you think that sitting a rookie QB is actually the move, or is that like outdated thinking where that used to be very commonplace and now that's not like they don't need the time to sit because we have these guys that are playing 6 years because of COVID and you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Sitting rookie QBs their first year or first couple of years?
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big advocate for it. I think there's a couple of things that make me feel that way. First of all, the whole game is at a different speed, both on offense, but more so on defense. So reads that you're used to being open might not be open because even the big guys are faster now. You're not going to have as much time in the pocket to throw the ball because the big guys are coming through the line quicker than they were in college. The entire game is faster and more athletic at every single position. And I think some time to really get some reps and to get some mentorship and experience that speed of the game can really go a long way. So, yeah, I think sitting them is a great strategy. I think it can also prolong their careers. If you make them hungry, make them work to get out on the field, maybe they perform a little better or maybe are a little better prepared. But more than that, if you put them out there too soon and they get annihilated and maybe they get injured or they just are getting their ass whooped and they're losing confidence in their abilities to win, it can really mess up some of the psychology, I think, in some of these athletes who are used to being the best in the world for their league that they're in.
Yeah.
And that could really be maybe a blow that can really hinder some people. And some people out there might not be very sensitive to that. They might say, well, they can suck it up. Like they're making a ton of money. They're professional athletes. But if you're a coach, if you're a GM and you want to have a long career from your rookie quarterback, if you can, I would sit them for at least half of the first season, if not the entire year, and really let them acclimate to the game at the NFL level.
Okay. That I see where you're coming from on this. Do you, I don't know. There's kind of a flip side to it though as well, right? So I've thought about more modernly,
Mm-hmm.
if you sit someone and they're touted to be this generational talent and they're supposed to be, you know what I mean? Like, hey, like, we got our guy, like our guy's here. He's going to help lead this team, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Could that also, I think some of it comes down to I don't know. It almost seems like some of it comes down to the personality of the quarterback. Like
Yeah.
there's some guys out there that I can imagine if you sit them, they're going to get fired up and they're going to work harder and they're going to want to be like, I'm going to put in 120% every day at practice and go all out because I need to win this spot. And this is this could be the first time in my career that I've really been in this type of a situation where like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
the guy right away. Right. Like
Yeah.
I'm in a whole new league, like generally,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess quite literally. But then there's also guys out there where it's like an ego thing, like you said, where they come in and they're used to being the guy and the top person. And then you put them out there and they learn that the hard way. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, I think some of it's honestly just based on per person. I
Yeah.
actually don't know that it's like I don't know that I would say it's a you should or you shouldn't. I think it's quite literally who is the person you drafted and how are they going to respond to that
Yeah.
situation.
I think part of it depends when you draft them too. You can't draft Fernando Mendoza first overall this week and then expect to not see him on the field the entire year. Now, they picked up Kirk Cousins, which I think was a really good decision for them.
Yeah.
He can play locker room mentor to Mendoza. He can go out there and take the beating for the first 6 or 7 weeks because there's going to be beatings handled out to the quarterbacks on that team. When you can give Mendoza a little bit of time and build him some slow hype to get in as the team continues to suffer because they're going to do that regardless. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you draft him number 1 overall without fixing the other holes that this team has and then also not play him. I just think that makes absolutely no sense. And so, we've seen it. A lot of times these quarterbacks come in and they start right away. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, those guys look pretty good their rookie years, especially in the second half of the year. Bo Nix is a great example. He was kind of mid. He was kind of bad the first half of his rookie season, but the second half he was phenomenal. But then there's also some sophomore slumps in these guys too, and part of it might just be that there was no tape on these rookies, right? Like you're developing the tape as it goes, and then once you've got it, you're more prepared for them. And so it's such a phenomenon. You see these other guys come off the bench and play amazing, like Jimmy Garoppolo made a career out of that, and like Ryan Fitzpatrick made a career out of like kind of coming off the bench and would still be getting signed to other teams to go back him up for that.
Yeah.
Malik Willis just got a big, he's going to the Dolphins now to be their new starter after spending some time behind Jordan Love. Jordan Love spent some time behind Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers spent some time behind Brett Favre. The Packers have this down like that. It's clear that how they would answer this question.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I mean, you got some of these other guys that didn't do so well. Like historically, looking at some of these guys, do you think that Johnny Manziel would have done better if he got to sit his whole rookie year and just get to know the game and mature a little bit as a guy? Do you think that some of these guys are just lost causes regardless?
No, I think his literally proves my point of what I was just saying. He was a mess off the field, right? Mm-hmm. So like from that, knowing the player, I don't think if you started him or sat him, he was going to be successful because he was just a train wreck off the field. Right? Unless he went to like the Patriots or somewhere where they would make him, or even, I don't know, force him to be more disciplined or help him, I guess, through that, whatever, the off field stuff. I don't know if they would help him. I'm just saying like the Browns probably are not the most disciplined spot to be at, right? Like, yeah, I don't know that that's the greatest fit for that type of a guy, but I think that comes down to the player. Like, I don't know if that guy would have succeeded, unfortunately, no matter what.
That's fair. And to play devil's advocate to myself, just looking at last season, you've got like Cam Ward at the Titans, for example. I would have said that guy could use some mentorship and a year off, and he probably could have. He didn't play great, but also they didn't really have a lot of options there, right? Like regardless, it was going to be the same thing. And I think he was the kind of guy, and maybe it was coaching or maybe it's his mentality. I don't think that he got worse for playing. And I don't think that he got banged up too much compared to other quarterbacks in the league for playing. And so we all knew the Titans would suck, and then they did. And so maybe it was nice that he got some real reps, and then they continued to rebuild this year because they still sucked. And now they've got a more experienced quarterback that's still very young. So there is a devil's advocate to it, but I think that you got to be very careful. And like you said, I think knowing the player and their mental capacity and their maturity, I think is the big stepping stone to making that first decision.
So who do you think gets blamed more for draft picks going wrong? Do you think it's like the GM of the team or the actual player themselves?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think the players take more of the public heat. If you think about it, like how often are people just labeled as busts right off rip, right? Like, oh, this guy was a bust. That guy was a bust. What a bust. Like that was a terrible pick in hindsight. And I don't think it becomes a GM issue until it happens for like a decade straight, right? When everyone is a bust, people start to look at their GM maybe. Mm-hmm. But I think it takes a while and a lot of kind of consistent busts before people look at the GM. I think the player takes the blame first, for better or for worse.
Yeah, it's almost like if the team continues to struggle year after year, that's when it points more towards the GM or the coach or, more of like the leadership. Like, I mean, the Lions and the Browns are both great examples of that where, for how long have the Lions been horrible? For how long, have the Browns struggled? And then I think that's when people start to really switch the focus to that of like, maybe it's not the players. I mean, maybe they're not making the best decisions on the players, but whoever is orchestrating this and drafting and putting this together and making those decisions is clearly not getting or finding the formula, to success.
Yeah. At a minimum, we should call it a shared responsibility. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about schemes. And I think sometimes that these coaches press for, or these GMs push for, picking maybe who they think is going to be the best at the position without necessarily considering the scheme that those players excel in and how that aligns with what their team is doing. And in that case, I would fully blame the GM for that.
So think of this. This is a very, very different concept. I don't know that I've ever really heard anybody talk about this. So I am curious to throw it out there to the universe too. If you're a GM or an owner, let's say both, right? Because we know that owners obviously have says in a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you look at it more as a business? So meaning, are you purposely looking at it saying, well, if I draft someone who is very highly touted and could bring some energy and excitement, does that then equal more ticket sales? Does that then equal more jersey sales? Does that then equal more publicity for my team? Like, do you think that like the GMs and the owners are looking at it that way naturally rather than hey, like it'd be great to win a Super Bowl. Obviously, like that's the
Hmm.
pinnacle. But I don't know how much of it do you think is more that of like it's like a chess game of all
It,
like making money, right? At the end of the day, it's a
yeah,
business.
I think all of the above is true. Everything you just said, I would attribute to drafting and trading and free agency pickups. Again, you want to keep the fans excited. Sometimes that means you got to do maybe what isn't necessarily the best decision, but it makes you the revenue in all the other ways, right? Other than just winning football games. And so I liken that to like if a GM is kind of like dead stuck, I can go this way or I can go this way. I think money always decides that tiebreaker. Which one
Mm-hmm.
of these players is going to be more marketable to our fan base? Which one of these
Mm-hmm.
players will put more eyes on our team? And I think that's exactly why we're seeing Mendoza being chosen first overall this week for the Raiders, because it's going to bring the jersey sales. It's going to get them, maybe some primetime football games, maybe not because they were
Yeah.
really bad last year, but it's going to open up some doors that would be closed if they picked up like 2 or 3 linemen. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, yes, to your point, I think there's a seesaw there. I think they're weighing their pros and cons. And I think money does talk in the end of the day on some of these decisions.
But how much do you think like the average sports fan thinks about that kind of stuff?
Very little, I would say.
Mm.
I think the average sports fan thinks about that very little. The diehards might consider it, or maybe the diehards don't consider it at all. Maybe the casuals are more considerate of that because I think sometimes the diehards are too focused on analytics and scouting reports and all these things, which that's a whole nother conversation we could go down right now. But yeah, I don't think it's a common thought to consider the business behind some of these transactional decisions other than salary cap. I think everyone thinks about salary cap, but I don't think people think about the indirect revenue that comes in from these players from advertisement deals and jersey sales and TV time and
Mm-hmm.
HBO Hard Knocks, like these types of things that come up, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of just an interesting, for whatever reason I was thinking about it. I was like, when you really break this down, right? Like there's more to it than obviously it's sports at the core.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like it's still a business, right? Like they make money. Obviously the players get paid a shit ton.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just feel like there's like a whole nother side of it's like a rabbit hole, of like the business side of sports where
Oh yeah.
some of the decisions may not make any sense. And, I feel like when people talk about stuff and criticize people, it's like, I think it's really easy to see it from our perspective of, average and above average guys. But
Yeah. I
I
think
don't
the
know.
business side of things actually makes it even more perplexing for why Shador Sanders didn't go until the 5th round last year because like the dude is it Nike? He's got like a Nike deal. Yeah, because he had like the just do it with his arm pump. And so yeah, I think there's some financial gain to have him on your team, but it's also, in my opinion, a very short term financial gain because that dude's not going to be starting in the NFL, right? I think he's already seen most of the field time in his career. I think Deshaun Watson may take over that team again this year. And so we may have already seen like the most that we're going to see of Shador Sanders at this point. In that case,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't really worth it. And so maybe that's why they didn't pick him until the 5th round.
Well, I heard all the massage parlors closed down in Cleveland. So he's probably be back.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe he can go to New England with Mr. Kraft.
Maybe. Hey, listen, something's in the water up there. Now we got Mike Vrabel in the news with with some
Oh, yeah.
distractions. And he had some
Distractions.
difficult conversations recently, is what he said he had to have. So
Distractions.
hell of a football coach, though.
Talk about busts.
Wow. Yeah, we went there. We went there.
I had to. So going back to the actual draft, right? Like we had
Yeah.
the combine. I know you and I talked in the past about just general thoughts about the combine. There's like a little bit of there's kind of some gimmickiness to it. Obviously, I think some of it is
Mhm.
also just like to hype things up in the dead space of sports. I don't know though. What do you think from we'll do two perspectives. Let's do a fan perspective and then go back to like an NFL GM or coach or whoever, whoever's like actually doing the drafting side of things. Do
Mhm.
you think that there is just like an over scouting of players at this point where people are just looking way too deeply into every, you know what I mean? Every like they ran this 40 and they did this in this game. Like, I mean, there is
Yeah.
really a lot of discussion around this topic of
Oh yeah.
who's the best and who could make it and Mel Kiper and the mock draft and all that. Give me the two different perspectives.
Yeah, I think first of all, in my opinion, yes, we are over scouting and we are over analyzing things. And I talked about this in the combine, but there are so many little things that we look at and we compare players on, and it's just like, oh well, if you succeed in this one random drill that doesn't simulate the game of football at all, then you're going to be drafted higher than this other guy who doesn't do that thing better. Yeah, I think we overanalyze a lot of things when it comes to scouting. because we want to try and hype up the draft, first of all, but also because we want a reason. This is the takeaway here. Sports analysts, everybody alike that is involved in this decision making and these projections, want a reason to be right even when they were wrong. They want something to point to still say, oh, well, this guy had all the tangibles. It should have worked out. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Instead of like, I think back, I mean, I don't know what scouting was like 20 years ago, but I imagine that there was a lot more people like watching these games and live in person and like studying game film and like looking, how does this player fit my scheme? Like, is this guy great at getting through gaps and pass rushing? Or now we're just like, well, how many times can he bench press 225? You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like weird how we're kind of focusing on these like weird isolated activities. I think the other part of this, Deeb, and I think this is the biggest part of it, is that I think all of these analysts, these GMs, they all want to be high on the same people so that it's almost like they want to have a consensus about who is the best at these positions and why they're the best. So that, again, it goes back to if they're wrong, if it doesn't pan out, they were all wrong together. They had this group mentality of like, we were all wrong here, and it doesn't make anybody look stupid. Everyone looks the same. And I think that because we have things like the combine and all these random ass things we can study, that everyone just kind of creates consensus decisions on who is the best for overall at positions instead of how they might fit into teams. And we've lost some of that kind of niche, abstract scouting. Like, I'm looking for a guy who's, let's say I want a wide receiver, right? Well, everyone's just like, oh, well, we should draft Tate. He's the best wide receiver. Well, what if I want a guy that's like shifty and smaller, that runs out of the slot and is a great route runner that's shifty and agile and has sure hands, but might not be the tallest or the fastest, and blah blah blah. I've already got those guys. I need the small shifty guy now.
Yeah.
Well, everyone says if I'm picking wide receiver, I need to pick Tate. So now I have to do that. And if it doesn't fit my team, well, we made the right decision. It just didn't work out. And I think that's where we're at with scouting now. I think the biggest issue is that everyone has to have the same kind of consensus about what the right pick is, instead of these GMs having the liberties of filling the holes correctly that meet their team and being okay with it not being the pick that everyone and their mama says you should pick. And I think that is also why Mel Kiper lost his mind last year, because in his mind, the consensus was that Shedeur Sanders was the number 2 quarterback in the draft, and him going 5th round is crazy. It makes him look like he was the only one saying that. And so, yes, that's a long-winded way to say, yes, we're overanalyzing and we're overthinking this. And I don't think that we're necessarily scouting and analyzing the things that matter the most, because the things that matter the most are more subjective. And it's harder to say that I made the right decision at the time with subjectivity.
I think the NFL draft is quite literally 50% guessing, and we pretend that it's science at the end of the day, right? Like, there is obviously things that are objective, like if a guy runs a 6'4", 40, like, I don't,
right.
maybe he's not cut out, because the speed in the NFL he's not going to do, generally speaking, well. He could be maybe the strongest guy in the world, but he won't be able to keep up speed wise. So I do think there is some stuff that, like, objectively, yes, like, you're just trying to understand, is this person do they meet the minimums to play in the league, right? Like, are they cut out, generally speaking, from a physicality or a talent standpoint? But I really just think like half of it's just a guess. You're just like, I don't know, this guy seems to be really good. He played well when he was at this college. We interviewed him. He seems reasonable. All right, let's try it out. The money's right. Like, I really do. I think that, like, people do try to make it as objective as possible, but there's just so much subjectivity, to your point, where it's like, he's either your guy or he's not, based on what what you actually need on your team. And
then the other side of the coin too, and I find this laughable every time that I watch the draft. They do it masterfully for like the casual fan. Anytime that someone is being drafted, they'll show you like the same like 5-play highlight reel over and over of this player, and it's like, oh yeah, this guy just played for like 3 or 4 years. Here are 5 plays that he made, and it's so funny. And then when you look at it, it's like, oh, they played against this like trash ass team for these highlights. They didn't do this against like a Georgia defense, but all of a sudden we're acting like this guy from Appalachian State is just as good as the wide receiver from Ohio State because he burned this like random D2 school on his deep route. Like, it's just, I think it's so funny, the visuals that they use. And granted, I don't really have a solution to do it better, because it does make the draft more entertaining while you're just sitting there for minutes at a time.
Hmm.
But yeah, it cracks me up, man. It's almost like, look how good this guy is on film. This is why they drafted him. And it's like, okay, well, you showed me the smallest sample size you could possibly imagine for why they drafted this guy. Like, can I see some more? You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Again, I think the whole thing is meant, the draft itself is meant, I think, to be a media mogul and to make some money.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked a little bit about fans, and I think I brought that forward in general, but how much do you think of the pressure that happens in the draft is from fans or media influence? And I know you kind of have covered that a little bit, like with the consensus part, but what about the fans and the media side of it?
Yeah, I think that they feed into each other. I think media pays very close attention to social media, and both of those things have only grown over time. And
Yeah.
so every single year that passes, I think that picks are influenced more and more from the outside perspectives of fans and the media. And fans and the media fuel each other because media is going to say what is going to get the fans to engage with their content, whether it's that they agree or disagree. And so it's almost like a self perpetuating cycle where fans are pushing media, and then media is pushing GMs, and everything is pushing them towards a certain direction. And then if they don't make that pick, everyone's pissed because it's so visible what everybody wanted and what everyone said they should do. And so yeah, I think it becomes more and more pressure every single year as we live in a lifestyle where information only is becoming more and more accessible, even if it's not even true. So yeah, I would not like to be a GM that has any type of presence in social media, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked a lot about media on this podcast in the past, mainstream kind of what's talked about, what's the major story. Last year, like the Shador thing was there all over. People were like nutting about this guy. And you know what I mean? I mean, it just seemed like everywhere was just, oh my gosh, like he's this and that. And I'm just like, are you guys not looking? I mean, talk about being subjective. I'm like, okay, I mean, we actually have some objectivity here of like how he played. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he had like horrible stats in college, but you know what I mean? Just like break it down, right? Like break down some of the objectivity here and don't just hype somebody up because they have the last name and blah, blah, blah. I just feel like that's kind of the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the fans, they want the excitement, right? To the point we talked about earlier. They want to be excited. They want to have a good team. They want to win. They want to be able to go to games or watch games or be a fan and be validated that like their team is good and it's their year and they're going to make the championship and this year's going to be different. So,
Mm-hmm.
but think about this. At the end of the day, I mean, football is meant to be, in sports in general, in my opinion, are meant to be a fan's game. Right? Like those
Yeah.
people pay money to come to the games and hold the season ticket and buy the merchandise and pay for the YouTube or Hulu or whatever, whatever service people use, ESPN, blah, 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 to tune into those games and give the eyes and, the advertisements and all this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the list goes on and on. So kind of in a weird way, I don't know. It is a little bit weird because like, what if the NFL draft, instead of being the GMs and the owners picking, they allowed the fans to have a vote in who they want to pick. And then they would have to consider that in their selection process.
Yeah, that'd be a dangerous game. I mean, these GMs and coaches are paid to win and to build around winning. So it'd be really challenging to keep your job if you put all of that responsibility into the fan of a casual who just has to hit a button on their iPhone while they're eating Cheetos on their couch.
But with no fans, there's no sports.
Yeah, and with no winning, there's no fans, you know.
Right.
So yeah, I think the winning should always be the ultimate goal. And I think you should occasionally deviate from that for fan excitement. That is my philosophy on GMing.
But if there's nobody there, Scott, to buy the tickets or to provide anything, I mean, even if you win, it doesn't matter. Who's watching, right? At the end of the day, who's watching you if there's no one there
Yeah.
to
But
win?
again, but if you keep losing, then who's watching that either? You know, I think it's double sided. I think that's the ultimate philosophy. Do you want star power or do you want wins? And how do we balance those two to please everybody at least a little bit?
Yeah. What do you actually think would happen if fans got to do the picks?
I think that there would be people drinking Four Roses Private Barrel Select and having a 3 or 4 of these, and then being like, you know what, screw it, let's draft a kicker this year. I mean, you would have some crazy stuff happening. I think it would be very dangerous because you wouldn't be able to limit it to just people with sports knowledge. And also, how would you identify like who's a fan of which team. Like people could go vote for other teams and try and sabotage their picks. I think there's a whole lot of considerations that would have to
Oh
go
yeah.
into that then.
Oh yeah. I mean, you would have to make it if it was an actual thing. If we're talking like, from theory to, you would have to like create some sort of a way to validate, which like to your point, I mean, how do you validate if someone's really a fan or not? That's probably the
Yeah.
hardest part, but
Well, you
I
certainly
don't
don't
know.
want to tie it to a driver's license or a state ID because voting for politics has not been well received for that. And I don't think that people would be receiving that very well for voting for their draft for their NFL team.
That's fair. I mean, I know like other sports do fan voting for all-star games and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely a process for some of this, but I don't know. It's almost like I don't know. You'd have to create like almost like a membership system for a team. Like
There you
if
go.
you
Hey, that would make the team some more money, right?
yeah, like hey, okay, if you're a fan of this team, let's say you're a Jags fan, I don't know, I'm just picking a random team.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have a say in this year's draft, sign up for this membership. Pay, you have to pay, right? Like, but if you actually want to participate, you say you're a fan, you got to pay. You got to
Yeah,
put
yeah.
some skin in the game. And if you do that and we can confirm all this stuff, then you get a say. Because I do think, yeah, if you just let it like loose to everybody, yeah, I mean, there's going to be a ton of sabotaging. But I'm not saying that's a perfect system, but it's almost like you would have to get people to literally commit. And it's a way to actually make money, to your point, for the team.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. So another question for you. What do you think is the biggest red flag when people are looking at players to potentially draft? Is it like if a player has an injury or if they've had a career of, injuries in college or in the past? Is it your character? Hey, we interviewed them, or like they have some off the field stuff, like a few players we've talked about. Or I think you kind of brought this up, the competition level that they've played at, like
Yeah.
you played in Appalachian State versus like a Georgia, for example.
Mm-hmm. Man, that's actually a really challenging question because I think all three of these things are very important when it comes to analyzing players. Man, I don't know. I almost think character concerns may be the biggest red flag. There are athletes who have turned it around. But for example, if I were to draft a Johnny Manziel, I would be pretty certain that there might be some character correction that would need to happen. And
Yeah.
that takes it to a whole nother level. Injury concerns can be overcome by things like physical therapy and strength training, and still injuries will happen, right? And we kind of do see that people re-aggravate injuries from time to time. Competition level, you can coach players, you can work with them if they have, if they have the abilities and it's just a difference of speed and size, you can work on coaching some of those things and correcting some of those things. Character is not entirely up to you. They have to be willing to change their character too, or to buy into a system. And so I would probably say character is the biggest red flag because it's the hardest to change, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. I do like that one for sure. I think character is a huge part of it. I actually am not as concerned about competition level. And I'll tell you why. I think, yeah, there's definitely a difference between somebody who plays in the SEC, and plays really well versus somebody who plays in the, I don't know, name whatever, whack mac, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can name many different conferences that would not be considered as whatever, Power Five. But there's so many players that come from those different conferences that end up making it and being starters and having Hall of Fame careers.
Right.
So I actually don't think that that's as big of a red flag, generally speaking. I just think it's like we said, 50% of it's just a guess, right? Like those guys actually sometimes do work out no matter their competition.
Mm-hmm.
I actually am concerned though a little bit with the injuries piece because I don't know. I just think depending on the type of injury that someone suffered, and I don't know what kind of, at some of these different colleges, they may not have nearly as much access to rehab and all this kind of stuff as like an NFL team does.
Mm-hmm.
That actually makes me a little bit more concerned, but it kind of just depends on the type of injury and how long ago was it and did they fully recover? Like, can you truly be certain? Is there evidence that they're really recovered? Or are they going to like re-aggravate something weird?
Yep.
So
I would agree. I think that would be my second biggest, and it's very, very close.
Yeah. So who do you, I feel like I know the answer you're going to give, but who do you actually think goes number one this year in the draft? And who do you think is a player that falls in the draft or is like, maybe a big name where kind of like last year, I feel like it was Shedeur Sanders. And I don't know if we'll have an equivalent this year, but if you have to give two names, who do you think those are?
Number one is going to be Fernando Mendoza. I would bet a lot of money on that. I think someone who could fall in the draft. I'd be really curious actually where he's Oh, it looks like he's projected 13 based upon ESPN. But Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver, I could see him potentially dropping a little bit in the draft. We'll see. I think obviously Carnell Tate is the top wide receiver in the draft. I think I could see Jordan Tyson and even Concepcion being kind of picked above Mekhi Lemon. And I don't know if you saw this, but Casey Concepcion, he sent a letter to every GM in the league. This is actually a really cool story. He sent a letter to every GM in the league and basically, like, in the letter said, I'm the best receiver in this draft. You're not going to regret calling my name. Never. I mean, never. So, like, he basically is calling his shot and saying, if you take a chance on me, you won't regret it. And I actually think, if done correctly, that can instill a little bit of confidence into a GM, because you know the mentality of the player and you know the work ethic that they might be working towards to make sure that they're not going to eat those words later in their career.
Okay.
So I could see, you know, I think, and a lot of these ratings have Mekhi Lemon being maybe the second wide receiver drafted, but I could see him being like as low as the fourth, maybe.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, USC has a reasonable track record of wide receivers, I feel like, lately, but they can be kind of bust-ish, bust. I don't know, like not all of them work out. Like, obviously, we already talked about. I agree with you. I do think, unfortunately, Mendoza goes first. I don't know that there's any way around it. I mean,
yeah,
whatever. I know some guy was like, Ty Simpson's the best quarterback in the draft and blah, blah, blah.
I think that's a reasonable argument. I don't think I would bet money that Ty Simpson's better than Mendoza, but I think that it might be closer than what you would think.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of funny because I don't think Ty Simpson's even going to get drafted in the first round. And Mendoza's going to go number 1 overall, which is just kind of a crazy dichotomy there whenever I feel like those are pretty similar players as far as skill level.
My one, I don't know, maybe it's just easy for me to do the QBs because I feel like that's the one that sometimes they do fall, like, or they're more notable. I think Garrett Nussmeier falls, man. I think he was super overhyped. And same thing with Cade Klubnik. I don't think he's as highly rated in terms of draft, but I mean, Garrett Nussmeier in a lot of things is like the 4th quarterback in this draft of people who could be. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 5th, 6th round, to be honest with you. I really just don't know that he's cut out like what we maybe thought. Even like at LSU, I don't think he was that good. So
I'm wondering where his projected spot is.
I actually have really not. Quick. Yeah, I have not looked. I think
it says he's projected early to mid 2nd or 3rd round pick. Interesting.
No, I think he goes earliest 4th. I think maybe 5th or 6th. 6th would be a stretch, so maybe 5th is what I'm gonna.
Well, and he's had injury issues recently too, right? And I think that goes back to what you said earlier. Yeah, it'll be interesting, man. I'm curious about Carson Beck as well. I think that dude might be a little bit overhyped. He's played on some really good football teams. He was in college for like 6 years. It's just kind of a weird situation there. But I guess we'll see. How it all plays out. Yeah. So this week we got something kind of special. We're going to actually do our single barrel picks for DraftKings. Believe it or not, Scott, they actually literally have betting on the NFL draft. So of course they do.
Doesn't surprise us, but
I wonder how much the Raiders are betting on their own pick. It's such an interesting thing to me. Things that you can really directly control.
That is kind of weird. I guess I never thought about that. That if you were
like, oh yeah, I'm like the 3rd cousin of the GM, and I know exactly who we're gonna pick. Like, you know what I mean?
Is it illegal for a player to pick on themselves, to bet on themselves to be the first pick?
It seems like maybe it should be if they have some insider information that suggests that they're going to get picked at that pick.
I don't know. I never thought about that. I guess I didn't even know that you could bet on this until tonight.
Bro, I mean, we talked about this lately. You can pretty much anymore. You can just bet on freaking anything. It's kind of actually insane. But I digress.
Okay, so the first one I think we've already kind of expressed, but I'm curious as you look at the actual odds if you make any changes. First overall pick in the draft, and the odds are pretty horrible on DK right now. So obviously maybe this one's kind of a dud. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, it's Mendoza, and the odds are insane. I mean, he's a 20,000 to 1 favorite for this. It's a no-brainer, but it's also not worth betting on because you don't make any money on that bet.
Let's put it this way. If you had to pick someone other than Mendoza for first pick, who would you pick on here?
I would pick that they're going to trade the pick.
I don't know. Can you do that? I'm sure you can do that somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, if they don't pick him, that what do they need? Wide receiver, they need O-line, D-line, corner. I don't know. Who do they pick then? I don't think it would make any sense to take this person at first overall, but maybe Mansour Delane, the cornerback from LSU.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
like he's projected to go 7th, right? So it wouldn't really make sense to
yeah.
pick him first. You would want to trade the pick if you were going to do something like that.
I would think if they're going to somehow flip the script and be whatever, like we don't want Mendoza or they don't trade it. The two players that stick out to me on the betting sheet are Arvel Reese and David Bailey. Both of them are defensive linemen, Texas
Mm-hmm.
Tech and Ohio State. I mean, those are three people that are plus 9,000, right? So like if
Yeah.
that happens, I mean that's a freaking crazy bet to hit. Any of the players on here, like Jeremiah Love's plus 25,000.
There's
So
no shot in hell they draft Jeremiah Love after they just
yeah,
drafted Ashton Genty. That would be,
yeah.
if they did that, they should be removed from the league.
Well, I'm surprised that he's plus 25,000 to be honest with you, based on that. But I don't know.
Well,
Maybe they're not accounting for trade. If there's a trade that happens.
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, because there's teams that want him.
Yeah.
That it's just probably not going to happen. But
What about let's do top 5 pick. So there's a lot of odds on here of who could be drafted in the top 5. Who do you like based on the odds that are out there?
Well, let me look at the odds, but I would say Jeremiah Love for sure would be my pick here. I think he goes either to the Titans or the Giants. I think it's a no-brainer that he's going to get drafted in either the 4th or 5th spot. He's minus 400, so that makes that feel even more like a secure bet, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to be edgy, I might look at Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs because Sonny Styles is right on the edge, like plus 115, and Caleb Downs plus 350. I think, again, that will come down to if there's trades or there's anything weird that mixes it up a little bit at the top.
Well, and with Sonny Styles, there are 3 teams in the top 5 that do need linebacker. And so it's possible for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's rated. Is he the top rated linebacker? I think he is, right?
Yeah, he is.
So yeah, I mean, it's very plausible, and that would make you some money versus plus 115 is a lot better than minus 400 if you're looking at betting.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Well, I don't know. I guess Caleb Downs, I think, is a safety though, right? He kind of played like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
As a safety.
Yeah,
in the draft.
He's not a linebacker. I was just double checking. Okay, so we got top 5, and then what about total number of running backs drafted in the first round?
I think 2.
What is the odds? Oh, okay. You know what? Here's how they do it though. They have over 1.5, under 1.5.
So I'd go over.
So over is plus 400, under is minus 700.
Yeah, so the favorite there is that only Jeremiah Love then gets drafted in the first round. I think that we do have a couple of other running backs that could get drafted here. Jadarian Price and Mike Washington Jr. are both teeter-tottering on some draft boards that are projected to potentially be even like the number 32 pick. So like right at the end, like the Seahawks replacing Kenneth Walker with one of these guys, for example.
Also, I'm not going to lie to you. I did not know that Notre Dame had 2 running backs that were that highly ranked in the draft this year.
Yeah, I didn't either. I realized that while I was prepping for this podcast. I had not heard of which one was the other Notre Dame guy? I don't even remember. Was it Walker? Not Walker.
No, Jadarian Price is the other Notre Dame.
Yeah. And then Washington is from Arkansas. And it's very interesting because I've looked at only a couple of different mocks, but some have Washington and some have Price, but the ones I've looked at both have a running back going at number 32, which would still be barely in the first round.
Who do you got for first wide receiver selected?
I hate to say it, as a Michigan fan, but Carnell Tate, I think, is pretty damn good. I think he's good, and I think he gets a little bit of... He was almost overshadowed by Jeremiah Smith being out there, but I think Carnell Tate holds his own. I think he's a really good wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's minus 200, so... The next closest is plus 130 at Jordan Tyson.
Tyson, okay.
Mekhi Lemon is plus 1,700. Wow.
Damn.
So people are thinking there's no way he's going to be the first one, which I mean, I agree. Carnell Tate, I think, is from just a shiny ball perspective, he's going to be first. But Jordan Tyson, I don't know.
Did you see Mekhi Lemon's interview after the combine when he was just staring at the camera really awkwardly?
No.
Go look that up. It is hard to watch. I don't know. It made me uncomfortable. I was like, what is this guy trying to do right now? So yeah, after the podcast, go check that out. And if you're still listening, look up Mekhi Lemon combine interview or whatever you want to type in. It's very awkward. He's just staring at the camera. I couldn't tell if he was trying to look tough, if he was trying to act sexual. It was a very, very confused. It was awkward. Dude, just seriously, just go look at it after the podcast. I promise.
Now I'm curious. I mean, overall, I hope we have a reasonable NFL draft. I mean, I think last year there was definitely some drama with the Sanders stuff. So I'm curious to see if anything weird or, unexpected happens this year. But I don't know. It kind of makes me think it's going to be a little bit more of a vanilla draft this year, just based on all the players that are out there.
No, I agree. I think it's. I mean, we're gonna see what it looks like, but I think we're gonna see a lot more of the trenches and the defenses being bolstered this year. I just
Yeah.
don't feel like overall, other than a couple of standouts, there's not a lot of like skilled players that make sense to draft early in the draft this season.
Yeah,
Kind
for
of a
sure.
brutal season if you had a high pick for like a mid to high pick for like fantasy football dynasty leagues, because I feel like there's a handful of these guys that are going to be great for dynasty fantasy football, like your Jeremiah Loves, your Carnell Tates, your Kenyon Sadiqs, like those guys I think will be great, but there's not a whole lot of them this year, and so it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I'm not going to use an early dynasty draft pick on a quarterback. Mendoza would
Yeah.
be the top one to pick, but even with that, you don't feel super comfortable about it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe longer term.
that'll be interesting to see kind of how dynasty leagues draft, and maybe we could talk about that after the NFL draft and kind of what those projections look like. But it's not
Yeah.
going to be as sexy as the last few years. I think we've been, as fantasy football enjoyers, we've been kind of spoiled the last few years with how many players have come out and just played great football as rookies or in their second season. And I don't think this season is going to stack up to that.
Yeah. But remember, Scott, it's 50% guessing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't know shit.
Well, hopefully y'all enjoy the NFL draft. I know I'll be trying to at least catch some of it, just to peep it and see kind of generally what happens, or if there's anything weird that transpires from it this year.
I'm hoping for like 5 trades in the first round just to really spice things up. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Or someone picks Tyler Shuck in the third round or whatever it was, where you're like, what the hell?
Kind of seemed like it might work out for them. I am very intrigued to see what the Saints do this year. Speaking of
Yeah.
intriguing picks, like that's a team that could have really benefited from a Jeremiah Love, but now that the Giants have the number 5 pick, the Titans have the number 4 pick, like Love's probably not going to fall to them. Do they trade up? I know some of these projections have them picking Carnell Tate to be kind of opposite of Olave and give Shuck another weapon, and it's like, oh, that'd be kind of cool too. So I think out of all the first round picks, I'm really looking at the New Orleans Saints this year, and I'm curious to see what they do because they have a lot of options. And either way, no matter which way they go, they're going to fill a much needed need for that team.
Yeah. Cool. Well, looking forward to the draft, and we will catch everybody next week. Cheers, friends.
Cheers.